We are joined today by a guy who has played close to 200 games of professional rugby, has won multiple championships, represented New Zealand in sevens, and now hosts one of the top, if not the top, sporting and rugby-focused podcasts in the country. What a lad. James Marshall, welcome to Sports and Other Stuff. How are you, mate?
Hey, good, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, like you said, mate, I didn't know it was 200 games. It seems like a lot when you put it like that, but I obviously listened to your episode with Joseph Parker, your first one, which I thought was an awesome yarn. So hopefully I can live up to the expectations of a World Heavyweight Championship boxer. But mate, looking forward to yarning with you.
Did you just on that? Did you see his fight yesterday, or the result?
I've only seen the highlights of it. I didn't see the whole fight, but mate, he looked pretty impressive out there.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, well done to Joe. If you're a big fan of the show, I hope. Well done. James, we'll get right into it. And I'm guessing the punters listening would the obvious starting point for this would be your rugby career. But we're going to come back to that later. This is about punting. We are the TAB, and we thought we'd start off with a bit of punting chat.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the last thing you had to bet on?
Mate, to be honest, like my punting has dropped dramatically. When I was in my playing career, I was fully into it. I was punting 24/7. Any spare hour I'd get, I was pretty much watching or looking up odds, or I was spending a lot of time on it, to be fair. But now with 3 kids and trying to transition out of rugby, I just don't really have the time to sit down, unfortunately, and watch a few races. But the last thing I probably punted was my own horse, Bodeswell, in the New Zealand Cup. That week's still always one of my favourite weeks, the New Zealand Cup week and the Melbourne Cup leading into it. So they were probably the last 2 that I did bet on. So obviously Bodeswell ran second, so covered my bet, but didn't make much money off that one.
You're a place better then, or an each way bet?
I was each way on him in that one, to be fair, yeah.
Nice. We'll get to Bodeswell soon. I've got a few questions to get into there and around horse ownership. But when you were playing rugby and you say you were punting, was it just horses, or do you have a particular sport? You're obviously not allowed to bet on rugby, but any other sport?
Yeah, it was mainly horse racing. I was a big harness man. That was probably my go-to, then followed by the gallops. And then probably rugby league, because that's, the closest thing to rugby that you're allowed to bet on. So a lot of the union guys follow the league pretty closely, and it's always a good way to be able to have a bet and a little bit of side interest into a game that you're watching.
And if you listen to your interview with Geordie Barrett, he loves League Two and sounds like he's going to go play.
Yeah, Warriors next year apparently. So, mate, looking forward to him partner up with Sean Johnson and Reece Walsh in the half. So, mate, it's going to be a big year. It's our year.
Big year. The Melbourne Cup last month, you had a crack on that. How did you go? Any luck?
Yeah. So the 2 things that I liked ended up getting first and second. Might sound like I'm making that up, but I did have them round the other way, to be fair. I thought the favourite was going to win, but I did like Very Elegant. And I think in my power play I played it pretty safe, because you never know what's going to happen in those races. I've been burnt so many times. One horse turns up and bolts in from out of nowhere. So had the favourite to run second and had Very Elegant anywhere in the top 4, I think. So I managed to get a collect for the punters that day, which was good stuff. Had a lot of messages from guys thanking me for that one. So that's always nice.
Yeah, we did a little partnership there over the month leading into the Melbourne Cup, and as you say, we managed to come up with a few power plays to give back to the punters, and it's fair to say the bookies aren't too pleased with your selections. They're great for the punters, but we got taken to the cleaners. So well done.
Yeah, mate, that first one obviously set it up pretty nicely for the punters with the All Blacks game, and Beauden Barrett and Geordie Barrett having a field day, scoring more than Wales, and Bodie scoring early, and the margin just somehow happened to hit. So, mate, the punters got off to a flyer, and yeah, they started getting stuck in. Unfortunately, the last one was a bit of a letdown when the All Blacks lost to Ireland, so I didn't see that one coming. But so the bookies got their money back then, probably.
Yep. Not the first time that the Irish have helped the bookies out around here, to be fair.
Yeah, mate, I could imagine any time there's an upset like that, especially against the All Blacks, the bookies clean up.
Yeah. I was out on a golf course with a friend when the first power play came in, and he was just in my ear. He's like, "Oh, have you seen this power play?" I was like, "Yeah, I know all about it." He's like, "Oh, we just need this to happen and 2 more points, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." I've been in trouble. Might not have a job when I come back to work on Monday. Harness punter, you be off to the races. You're based in Nelson, aren't you?
I am.
Harness racing over New Year's down there. Is it the Mochukaraka races or at Blenheim as well?
We've only got Richmond racetrack here in
Richmond,
Nelson.
sorry,
so,
yes.
They've only got 1 meeting a year. I think it's down to maybe 2 meetings a year. So it's pretty disappointing. But yeah, when that meeting goes on, I like to get down there, take the kids down and try and back a couple. Yeah,
nice. You mentioned Bodeswell. We'll get into that. You're obviously an owner with Bowden Barrett, Marty Banks, and a few others. I guess, how did that all come about and start for you guys?
Yeah, so it was back when I was at the Hurricanes. John Linsky, who bred the horse and owns 50% of it, he wanted to just share the love a little bit in horse ownership, and he knew that I got along with him really well up in the Naki when I was up there. So he was always talking about his horse that he owned, to Boogie Nights, which was a good jumper, and we used to have some good yarns about that. But when he had the share that he was looking to offer up to some guys, he mentioned it to me. I was keen as to jump on. Bodie was keen, and then I started fishing around. There's quite a few guys who turned it down. To be fair, they just weren't keen to pay the monthly fee, which is involved with owning a horse. And I think they'll be looking back at that now, stewing. But it's always easy in hindsight, horse ownership. Some go well, a lot don't. But it's always a good ride, especially when you're in with a group of mates and stuff like that. It's been pretty unfortunate with COVID and stuff. We haven't been able to all get on the track together and wind them home, and some of the timings around rugby and stuff hasn't quite worked out yet. But hopefully, going forward, there'll be a big race meeting that we can all get to and enjoy together.
Yeah, nice. Anyone you want to name and shame who turned him down?
Gareth Evans. He was someone who I thought was going to jump on board, but no, he pulled out. And Fraser Armstrong, big punter as well, who just wasn't having a bar off the monthly fee. But fair enough.
Yeah, right. Bodeswell had 4 runs this trip for a 9th, and then 3 back-to-back second place finishes, including the New Zealand Cup, who jumped favourite. Is that a successful but somewhat disappointing stretch of races for you guys?
Yeah, well, if you told me at the start, the New Zealand Cup was always the goal. So if you told me at the start of the campaign that he was going to run second at the New Zealand Cup, I would have been pretty stoked with that. I think he opened at $13 when we first realised that he was going to head to the Cup, and I thought that was not enough. I thought that was a bit unders, to be fair. I didn't think he was. I hadn't really proven enough to me personally that he was going to win the New Zealand Cup. I thought he would be a good chance. He's one of those horses who gives it everything. He can stay all day, but he hasn't really shown that turn of foot to be able to accelerate off in the final stages of a race like that. So I was always I wasn't convinced that he was going to have a really big campaign, but once the field started to come up and his run leading up to the race was really good, I thought that was the race of. It was at that moment where I thought that we could have the New Zealand Cup winner here. So grew a lot of confidence from that. And then obviously his race in the New Zealand Cup was massive. He didn't settle. He still struggles to settle in his races, even in over 3,200. He just didn't settle. So I had to loop the field, make 2 big sprints, and it showed a lot of ticker in that race to hang on for second. To be fair, it was a massive effort and a huge run.
Yeah, it was, and a very good race to watch. Yeah, like you say, that run leading into the New Zealand Cup was the one I think he started before that run. He was in the future market, maybe about $7.
Yeah,
Jumped at about 450, close to for the New Zealand Cup. So big shift in the odds there. Trained by John Wheeler.
Yeah,
is that right? Yeah, that must be pretty special. He's not doing as much now as what he has done in the past, but that's a pretty cool connection for you guys.
Yeah, mate, he's a legend of a trainer. I was obviously starting to not do as much training as he used to, but obviously his record speaks for itself, and he knows how to get a horse ready for a big race. And like we saw in that New Zealand Cup, he was definitely ready, and he was no doubt the best horse in the race. Just had a very tough run, and looking at some big races going forward. So he's a good man to get him ready for some of these big ones. He knows what to do, and he's done it before.
Yeah, nice. Had you always, I guess, you and Bodie and Marty always been into horse racing, or was it the opportunity to acquire Bodeswell, create something for you guys, or is it a bit of both?
We've had me and Bodie have owned quite a few horses together. We had a syndicate back at the Hurricanes, which went really well on the punt. So we ended up buying a horse as a syndicate. I think there was about 6 of us. Bodie was one of them. And we went through a journey of horse ownership where we owned about 4 different harness races. And one's just retired over in America. So they ended up going right round in circles, but it was a good run. I think we all chucked in $40 each at the start. Ended up getting it up to 10K, and then thought, what are we going to do to this? What are we going to do with this money? And no one, especially guys like Bodie, $1,000 or whatever it was, if we split it all up, wasn't going to change his life. So we all chucked in. We all just thought would get a horse and enjoy that experience, and got Tom Baggery, the trainer down in Christchurch, who's a lad. He trained it for us, and yeah, like I said, we had a couple of wins, but none of them were guns. But it was good fun.
What's the process for anyone that's listening to, if they wanted to get into horse ownership? What do you have to go through? You just walk into not a shop, but walk into a stable and say, hey, I want to get involved, or what are you up to?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably just message a trainer or someone and say you're keen to get into horse ownership, and I'm sure they'd look after you. They're always looking for new owners. It's part of the game, which I guess they're always struggling to keep up with the demand. So trainers like to look after new owners and try and keep them in the game for as long as possible. And there's plenty of good trainers out there who would be keen for a new owner if they are keen. My recommendation, I think I've owned 13 horses now. Only 2 have probably been in the green. There it is. If you're looking to make money, I wouldn't recommend it as a smart investment. But if you're looking for a good time with some mates, you can have a hell of a good time. And I'd recommend probably going a low percentage. 10%'s pretty decent, and anything less than that's okay as well. So I wouldn't recommend going in too heavy early, and just get the experience of it, because you still get all the perks of horse ownership when you've only got your 1%. So it can be as little as that, and then when things do go wrong, or if horses get injured, or if they have to take a break, it's not too much of a burden for you.
What are some of those perks that you're saying? You obviously get to go to a few of the meetings, and
yeah, I think that's the main one. You get to go to the meetings, you get ownership, you get to go into the owner's lounge, and obviously spend a day with your mates in there and wind home one of your horses, which is a pretty cool experience. And then one of my favorite things to do when I head down to Christchurch, I always like to get out to Tom Baggery's stable, and he always lets me take them for a spin around the track, which is such a thrill. Love getting on the back of them, especially they feel like they're going a lot faster than they are. You feel like you're flying on the back of them, and it's a pretty cool feeling. So yeah, there's a few perks in it, and I would say just the journey of going through a horse's career, a little bit like a rugby player, I guess. You follow it from a young age, and you see it go through its rises and falls and setbacks and things like that. And when they eventually get to the track and come up with a win, you feel pretty proud of the horse, to be fair.
Yeah, nice. So what I'm hearing there, and possibly another clickbait opportunity, is that you're looking to get into driving and become a driver.
To be honest, mate, as a young fella, my dream was to always be a jockey. Like, that was my first dream before my dream to be a professional rugby player came in. I loved horse racing. Like, my dad, me and my brother used to follow my dad everywhere. Like, he'd spend a lot of time at the TAB. So me and my brother spent a lot of the time at the TAB as well. When he was looking after us, that's pretty much where we'd go. And like, I used to love the races. All our holidays were sort of based around racing meetings, etc. So I fell in love with the sport at a really young age, and just used to admire the jockeys. It used to always look pretty cool being on the back of one. Obviously got a little bit too big. Probably couldn't get down to 53 kgs, although I'm not that big. I would still struggle to get down to those weights. So yeah, maybe the cart is the thing. I did actually look to get my harness license. It is actually a bit of a dream of mine to at least ride one and run one harness race. So I looked at getting my license a few years back with Marty McKenzie. We were going to do it together so we could ride at one summer meeting together and see how we go. But a few things came up with rugby, so we couldn't get it done. But maybe down the line might be something I'll look to do. One Richmond Raceway, you know.
Oh, plenty of time left on the clock. There you go, punters. There's a TAB exclusive. James Marshall will drive a kart in the future. Oh, that's fantastic. I remember growing up, we were the same. We'd always, mum and dad always go to the track and have a punt. And on New Year's Day in Dunedin, we'd head to Wakawaiti. And I think it was the first 50 cars through the gate, the kids, if there were kids in the car, they'd get a Moro bar. And so our thing was always like, we have to be one of those first 50, Mum. Get the Moro bar.
That's it.
Yeah. Just going back to sort of, I guess, the success of horse ownership as you said you wouldn't use it as a money maker as such. But do you know off the top of your head, if you've backed Bodeswell to win in every race, which I imagine you have, what your ROI is?
No, I wouldn't have a clue. And to be honest, I haven't. Like I said, there's times in his career where he's let me down a couple of times, but pretty much the times I've backed him, he's gone no good. But yeah, I'm not sure. What is it? Do you know it?
I do know it. So 30 starts, 4 wins, 5 second place finishes, 6 thirds. ROI is, if you backed him to win every race, 8%. That's pretty good.
You take that, wouldn't you?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
and
definitely not at that.
Chuck a few place each way bets in there as well, and you probably you're up even more.
Yeah,
so nice.
No, that's surprising.
Yeah, there you go. Is the horse named after Bodie, or is that just a coincidence?
I think John named it, and then he was pretty keen to get Bodes a part of it because of the name similarities. So I think that is a big part of the naming, to be fair.
A bit like Moanga.
Yeah.
What was the first win as an owner like? Were you guys all on track together for the first win?
Nah, we haven't all been on track ever, to be fair.
No.
I think when we go back to one of our first harness horses, there was his first win was I actually got second, but he was paying That's How We Roll was his name. He was paying about $40 or $50 to win the race, and he'd come up.
It's a lot in harness.
It is, I know. And he hadn't done much previously, but Baggo was pretty confident this race for some reason, and we all sort of backed him each way, obviously at those odds. And he got second. He ran a hell of a race, and I was on track, and it was unreal. I think there's 2 of us on track, but we were loving it. I had a big night that night, but together with Bodeswell, we haven't all been on track, just with rugby and COVID, like I said earlier, we haven't really had the chance. There's been a few opportunities where we thought we might have been able to all get together. Maybe we were thinking this New Zealand Cup, but obviously the ITM Bunnings Cup got extended, so then it ruled myself and Banksy out, which would have been at least a good opportunity. All the other owners managed to get there this year, which they looked like they had a hell of a time.
Very nice. What's next for Bodeswell, if you're allowed to say or not? Will we see him again this summer?
His main target's going to be the Sydney Cup over in Aussie, so that's the real big goal for next season, with an eye on the Melbourne Cup as well. He's proven he can run the distance, so mate, it'd be awesome if he could get to there.
Oh, yeah.
He is related to Very Elegant, so we're hoping for that similar growth. Obviously, Very Elegant had similar racing patterns, struggled to settle early in his career, exactly what Bodeswell is struggling with at the moment. So once he learns to settle, and hopefully he can develop that turn of foot that Very Elegant has as well, and we could see Bodeswell flying home to win the Melbourne Cup. And hopefully, if that happens, we will be all on the track.
I can tell you now, I don't think the bookies will be giving you any power plays.
Mate, surely he'll be paying plenty if he's in the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, that would be, I guess, as an owner, you're probably just wanting some success and have a good time, but the Melbourne Cup would be right up there with the ultimate, wouldn't it?
Oh, 100%. It's the biggest race in the world, in my opinion. So to have a horse run in it, it would be pretty incredible. We did have a horse, myself and another mate had a horse called Maxi Man, who raced in the Inter-Dominions, which was, for a harness lover, that was a pretty cool experience. We bought him as a claimer. He was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and he just had some late run in form where it took him all the way to the Interdom. So that was a pretty cool experience. But unfortunately, in the Interdom final, he choked down and pulled out. So it was a pretty disappointing watch. I was so pumped for it. The heart rate was going before the race. Could he pull up this upset over some of the greatest horses in Australasia? But no, he was caught behind one and just pulling too much, and ended up just pulling out. So it was a pretty disappointing finish.
Oh, that's cool though. That's very cool. And good luck for the Sydney Cup and the Melbourne Cup. That'll be incredible. Hopefully all bodes well.
Like that.
We'll get a little bit into your rugby career now. We'll circle back to punting a little bit later on, but if I'm honest, I didn't know a lot about your rugby career. I've followed rugby my entire life, and obviously know who you are and who you played for and that, but early doors didn't know a lot. So I did a bit of Googling and a bit of research. There's a very, very cool YouTube video that's about 8 minutes long of just your highlights. Some good highlights in there. Very nice.
Mate, need to get that more airtime.
Yeah. Did you put that together yourself, or was that someone else?
It was probably me.
But from what I can see, it was a reasonably tough start to your career, results-wise. Reasonably lean. A few years at Tasman in the early stays, and then is it Irani in Italy? Before obviously some huge success at Taranaki and the Hurricanes. How, sort of looking back now that you're retired, how do you feel about the way you started, and what were you thinking at the time? Was it tough, or did you always think things will come right?
Mate, to be honest, like when I was younger, the dream was to always become a Tasman Mako as soon as that team was formed. Growing up in Nelson, that became my goal, and the fact that we weren't winning a huge amount of games wasn't really a big negative for me. Like we were always the underdogs going into most games. We weren't expected to win many games. We were pretty new to the competition. So mate, I was just loving the fact that I was out there playing at the level against some of my childhood heroes. So back then, the results weren't too upsetting for me. Going over to Italy was a whole new experience. They were also a team that really struggled. They were I was playing up against some of the best players in Europe and some of the biggest teams in Europe as a 20-year-old kid trying to control a team at 10 without knowing any Italian. It was a real interesting experience, but one that I look back on with such good memories. And like most of my things in my career, it wasn't so much the games that I look back on. It was these memories that I've had, these players that I've met, hence why I've set up the podcast. There's so many cool guys out there playing rugby who have awesome journeys and awesome experiences that I feel like need more exposure. So, I look back on my career with so many good memories, so many good times, and success or failure on the field only lasted so long. It was always obviously you want to win all your games and as many as you can, but at the end of the day, I don't really remember the games I've won other than the big finals and stuff that everyone likes to talk to me about. But it's more those memories that you create along the way, which is unforgettable, really.
Yeah, nice. We'll get into those finals very soon. But what I guess at Tasman, you say you always wanted to play for the Mako, and I remember that when they were formed, there was not some hesitancy from the rest of the country, but it was always like, oh, this is a bit not really sure what's happening here. But what stands out in those first few years in that New Zealand Cup back then, as it was, what stands out in the first couple of seasons for you at Tasman?
For me, it was just realizing that I was probably good enough to compete at this level. Like when you're at school, you just idolize these guys and you feel like it's so far away to be able to play at that level. And you just, because you give these guys so much respect, you just think, like, I remember thinking going into my game, one of my first games, I think it was a preseason game against Auckland, and they had some All Blacks out there like Toiava and stuff. And I was just like, I would have been about 80 kgs straight out of school. And I remember thinking, there's no way I'll be able to tackle someone like him. Like he's a beast. He's fending off other All Blacks when you watch him play Super Rugby. Like, how am I supposed to be able to tackle him? But I don't know. You just end up getting out there. Yeah. I was never a great defender, but, I'd make a couple of tackles and then you realize that these guys do if you take them around the legs, these guys do fall down. They're not superhuman. If you run good lines, they're not going to be able to tackle you as well. So it was sort of a realization of the gap wasn't as big as you always perceive in your head. So that was massive for me going forward in my career. It gave me a lot of confidence for the rest of my career as well.
Because am I right in saying that going through school, you were never picked in the rep sides and it took a while to get going? Is that right? You had a goal to make the first 15 by 7th form?
Yeah. So I was, when I remember, I always wanted to be a professional rugby player. And I remember telling my teacher that.
After a jockey.
After a jockey. So this is when I moved down to Nelson, started actually playing rugby. And I thought, man, this would be such a cool lifestyle. Like I said, I idolized the All Blacks, idolized so many players. Christian Cullen was like my absolute hero. So when I got to college, and teachers would always ask me what did I want to be when I grew up, and I'd say I wanted to be a professional rugby player. But like you said, I was never in the rep team, so it was pretty hard to validate that I could be a professional rugby player. And then I realized that I needed to go pretty hard at this and thought seriously about it, set some goals. Like you said, I wanted to be in the first 15 by my last year at school, which I thought would be a good target for me because, like I said, I hadn't made the rep teams before. But as soon as I started training and putting in some effort and setting these goals, I realized how quickly things can happen, and ended up making the first 15 the year before I'd planned, and ended up being captain in 7th form, and then made the Tasman Academy. And the pathway from there happened relatively quickly and ended up getting trials with New Zealand 20s and things like that. I never made the side, but just being able to rub shoulders with all these guys, the best players in the country, from a couple of years earlier, I never would have thought that I would have been able to get there. So it was just, yeah, every time I would look back at it, I think just the more that more effort I put in, more I sacrifice, the quicker things started happening. And it was a infectious little cycle, really.
Must have been a hell of an under-20s, New Zealand under-20s team that you were trialing for there. This will be some big names coming up when you're in the mix there.
Yeah, it was. And every year you look back on them and there was. I remember Israel Dagg was the fullback. He was already playing for Hawke's Bay at the time, so he was a bit of a gun. They had Zach Guilford, Sean Maitland, Cade Puke, Ryan Crotty, all these guys who have kicked on and had massive careers. That's not even going near the forwards. And I think Dan Kirkpatrick was the 10, so that's who I missed out by, and Trent Renata as well. So they were quality 10s as well. And Dan Kirkpatrick ended up playing for the Hurricanes pretty much that following year as well. So he had a real early rise in his career. So he played a lot of Super Rugby really early on and then ended up heading overseas.
Mm. That I think it was your first or second year at Tasman. Bit rattling when New Zealand Rugby announced, I think it was 2008, that they were going to drop you guys, or you and I think it was North Harbour were going to be removed from the competition for financial reasons. What was that, hearing that like as a team before the season started?
Yeah, it was a crazy time. I remember marching down Trafalgar Street with a sign, "Keep the Marcos in the Cup." It was and there was a chant going, and I remember thinking, this is crazy. This is like my first crack in professional or semi-professional rugby, and I'm marching the street trying to save the team. And it was just a pretty crazy experience of not knowing whether the team's going to be around anymore, and pretty unique. But I'm so glad that New Zealand Rugby decided to keep them in there, and you can see where the shift that they've made now to where they've got to. Even though they didn't win the competition this year, they probably have been the benchmark of provincial rugby over the last few years. And from where they've gone, like you said, to that moment, marching the street, to where they are now, it's been an incredible journey from them.
Yeah, and I guess the quarterfinal appearance that season probably helped New Zealand Rugby's decision a little bit. You can't turf a team out if they're in the finals. It's as you say, glad they're still in the mix. They've been the top class team of probably the last decade almost. And yeah, unlucky to miss out this year. What's your role now with the team? You're into coaching?
Yeah, so I was an assistant coach this year. Pretty limited role, to be fair. I was running the edge D and the scrum attack, and working with the non-23. Looking to have a bit more of a role next season, hopefully. So really excited with the squad that's forming. And mate, like you say, it's such a cool team to be involved in down here. Like, there's so many awesome guys. Learned off some of the best coaches with Andrew Goodman, Shane Christie. They're such world-class coaches who are going to have massive futures. So it's been cool to be able to sit back and, while having a little bit to do, not a huge amount, and being able to learn off those guys, and hopefully next year be able to step up and take a bit more of a role, and hopefully go one better than we did this year.
Yeah, nice. Is coaching something, obviously you're passionate about it, but is that where you'd like to head coaching gigs somewhere down the line?
To be honest, like, coaching was always the thing that I thought I'd do after rugby. I always felt like I was probably more of a coach than a player when I was even out on the field. I wasn't physically that good. It was just what I felt like I could add was what I could see, and the pictures that I could see, and the communication and things that I could give. So they were probably the real strengths of my game, and even like the review and preview of teams and things like that. As a player, I felt like they were probably my biggest strengths. So I always felt like coaching was probably more my calling than playing. But once we travelled around so much throughout my rugby career, my wife she followed me everywhere, from Aironi when we'd first met to London to Japan, Wellington about 10 different times. And now with 3 kids, it makes that moving around a lot harder and a lot less attractive. We're pretty settled where we are here. So once I finished my rugby career, I sort of said to my wife that if the coaching gig came up where we'd settled, then I'd 100% jump at it. But I wouldn't move the family around to chase the coaching dream for myself. I just felt like it was time to let the family settle and do that family thing first. And maybe later on in my career, once the kids have all grown up and we're looking for a new experience, maybe. But we'll just see what happens. A lot can change in a couple of years. And very grateful for Tasman to give me an opportunity to coach where I am. So really enjoyed that this year, and looking forward to the future here.
Very nice, and not a bad spot to be either. Very nice and sunny in Nelson. I imagine it's pretty warm down there this time of year.
Mate, so good. Blue sky, sun shining. Oh, paradise.
I spent a week down there last Christmas, and it's beautiful. Love it. In 2012, you had a reasonably big year at Taranaki, just moved north from Tasman, and saw you gain your first Hurricanes contract for a 2013 debut. What's your first memory of being a part of the Hurricanes organisation?
Yeah, mate. So I was actually at the Sevens. I was with the New Zealand Sevens, and I had 2 tournaments where I was given, and Titch sat down with me at the start of the 2 tournaments and said, if you do well in these next 2 tournaments, I'll contract you as a Sevens player. And then wow. I had a phone call from Mark Hammett, who was keen to get me into the Hurricanes wider squad environment to train with the Hurricanes. So there was that decision early on for me, and I remember saying that, well, if Titch does give me the contract, then I will do the Sevens. And then ended up going to these 2 tournaments, played like stuffle minutes for someone who was trying to impress and earn a contract. And then at the end of the tournament, he said I just hadn't done enough to convince him that I was worthy of a contract in the Sevens. So that was my decision made. I went to the Hurricanes, and obviously no regrets. Hurricanes were always the team that I loved growing up. Obviously, I mentioned Christian Cullen earlier, but I just used to love the way they play. I was obsessed with them. I used to get in a few arguments at school. Obviously, a lot of Crusader fans down here at Nelson College growing up. So thankfully, the Hurricanes used to get up against them quite regularly. So it was always there was always some good banter at school. But it really was a dream come true to go into that Hurricane environment, see some of the legends who were training. And even though I was just wider squad, and back then we only did the preseason with them, it was such a cool experience to just see some of these legends and see how they worked. And it was surreal.
Interesting. I didn't know that about the Sevens. That do you think you'd still be doing Sevens now if we're all going well, injuries and all of that? But if you had gone down that path, there's a little bit more longevity to Sevens than there is 15s.
Yeah, it's such a hard one to know, but yeah. I genuinely think that I could have been like a Timmy Mickelson, where I got stuck in that Sevens environment, and obviously I think I was enjoying it at the time, so I felt like I loved the game as well. I think it's such a cool game, Sevens. So I genuinely feel like it potentially could have been my career if that did happen, but you never know in these sort of things. I was always coming back to play 15s in the NPC back then, so who knows, I might have picked up a super gig that following year. But yeah, it would have been interesting to go down those sliding doors if I was given that contract and see how my career turned out. But looking back on what I achieved, so grateful that I missed out.
Thanks, Titch. Shout out. I think I know the answer to this, but what's your favourite memory in the Hurricanes jersey?
Mate, like obviously the most expected answer is probably that winning that final, but there's just so many memories that stand out, and like I said earlier, not many of them were actually on the field. There's some awesome wins, and that final was awesome, especially after the year earlier where we lost the final, where I felt like we had a better team that year than we did the following year. I really felt like it was, we let that one slip, and we probably would have won that game if we played that 10 times, 7 or 8 times, I reckon, because our team was that stacked. We had All Blacks everywhere. I think genuinely, except for me, I think the whole side pretty much became an All Black or an international player. So, that one was obviously disappointing, and to go see the boys so gutted about that loss, and then the following year to be able to do the job and get that win over the Lions. But I always think back to that game, and when that final whistle went, obviously I was stoked we'd won it, but then it's sort of like I was more like a relief than anything. It wasn't like I wasn't like overjoyed, and I wasn't like I was happy, but I wasn't like, wow, man, this is the best feeling in my rugby career. I've always felt like the games where, where you're down on the scoreboard, even if it was like just a NPC game down in Southland, you're down on the scoreboard. You need 10 points to win in the last 3 minutes, and you come back from out of nowhere and you win that game. Those were the games where I was always like, man, that was the best high from a rugby game that you get, compared to winning that Super Rugby, where I always sort of felt like we were going to win that game. We were in control of it. We got the win, and it was awesome. The crowd was there, and it was a cool moment for the squad. But I always just remember thinking, man, wasn't quite what I was expecting once that whistle went. I was sort of like, okay, that was cool, but yeah, everyone says, oh, I can't put this into words. It's the best feeling in my life when they win stuff. And I was just like, well, I'm not really getting that.
I have to admit, I'm a Highlanders fan. So I was at the 2015 version. It was almost the best night of my life, to be honest. Yeah. It was incredible. But it was the 2016. It was almost a bit of a. You guys were clearly the best side in the competition. Although I think from memory, the Lions had the most points, but they didn't play a number of the tough teams that you guys had to go through. And the Highlanders actually they lost to the Lions in the semis, I think. So it was almost a bit of a letdown, or I think everyone back here in New Zealand was thinking and hoping for a repeat of the 2015 final. And I imagine that's probably what you guys would have wanted, to bit of redemption maybe. Did it feel like that at all, that it was a bit of a, as you say, a bit of a relief to get the win, but more of a, we should do this pretty easy? Or
never really, because I think going into our last round robin game, we needed to beat the Crusaders with 5 points.
That's right.
And the Lions had to lose to the Jaguares for us to finish top. So there was a lot of results we needed to go our way to even finish top. So although we were having a good year, I felt like we started off pretty slow. We lost our first 2. Everyone was calling us unfit. Phil Kearns had a spray, said the Hurricanes are lazy and all this sort of stuff. So it wasn't looking too promising at the start of the year. But there was a moment when we played the Lions over in Joburg where I felt like it just really switched for us. We got confidence in our line speed. We were putting teams under a heap of pressure, and it just built for the back end of the comp. And probably one of my favourite games was that one against the Crusaders, when we knew we had to win by 5 points. And Crusaders, obviously, the team that every team wants to beat. They've been the pinnacle for so long. And man, the boys just were so up for that game. It was such a cool feeling, and to beat the Crusaders as comprehensively as we did at their home was such a cool game. And then to work out that we finished top because of it, that probably gave us the advantage to win the comp, because home advantage is massive when it comes down to these games, especially when you're coming up against these South African teams. That travel in a finals week is pretty tough. And if we had to go to the Lions in that game, mate, I'd say that they probably would have got the result. So that's big of the that's how small the margins were going into that last round robin.
Just on the home advantage, obviously, I'm guessing playing Kiwi teams, it's probably not that much. You see it this year with the Super Rugby Aotearoa. It's pretty much flip a coin any game, doesn't matter where you are. But is it, going overseas to Australia and then to South Africa, does it get harder the further you go, obviously, travel and all of that?
Yeah, well, South Africa is a whole different beast because you've got the altitude to deal with and Joburg and things like that, which is tough. Like, it gets talked about a little bit, but man, your lungs, you get a different burn over there. So I remember watching the Hurricanes. I think it was the year after I left, 2017. They had a semi-final and they were up about 20 points. They'd score 3 quick tries and it looked like it was all going well. And then the altitude kicks in and the boys were just gassed and Lions ran right over top of them. And even the Crusaders final, when they won it over there, I remember, I think Quagga Smith got a red card, but Crusaders were up by plenty, but you could see them still get hit by it. 14-men Lions team were coming home strong, and you're like, oh, that's definitely the altitude and travel coming into effect there.
Yeah. It's tough enough running around just in general. Don't need to be made harder. You obviously you mentioned it before, but how bittersweet was that 2016 over 2015? Just relief, really.
Yeah, it was. Relief was the biggest feeling that I got. Like, we were expected to win going into that final. The year before was a little bit weighing on the mind, but once that whistle had gone, we'd had the win. It was definitely a big sense of relief. It's like, oh, so glad that we've won a title that's off our back. And it was a bit like that. That's probably a good way to sum up that emotion.
Yeah, he had a lot of characters in those Canes teams, particularly those 2 years. Any stories that you can share with TAB?
Mate, stories off the top of my head. I always like my because when you go to Africa, it's always a good time. Like you get to do some pretty cool experiences. You get to go out, see what it's really like over there. It's a whole different world, mate. There's like security fences on every property with electric fences. It's just crazy to see and it's crazy to witness, and so many people just out there on the street just living such humble lives and like on the streets. It's pretty eye-opening to see. But I remember one time when we went shark diving. So one of the activities was either you get a few activity options, and one was golf, one was shark diving, one was go visit somewhere. But a few of us, I think there's about 6 or 7 of us, we chose shark diving. So we got up early in the morning, went out, and it was so rough. It was the roughest day. We were on this little boat out to go swimming with sharks, no cage. And it was just, I remember being on
no cage.
No cage. It was crazy. And remember just being out there feeling so sick. I remember Michael Fatty Loafer being over the edge spewing, and all the boys started spewing. And then we got to the point where all the sharks were just circling us. And mate, we're all just so quick to get in the water just because we were feeling so sick. Like we didn't even care if the sharks ate us. It was that we were feeling that ill. It was crazy, mate. And just remember being in the water with all the sharks and all the spew floating around us. And it was one of those moments where you're like, oh my God, why have we chosen this? And I remember feeling sick for like the next couple of days. It was like such a bad seasickness that we all got. And mate, one of those moments, you're just like, oh, not sure if that was a good option or a bad, but I remember looking back at the photos, swimming with the sharks, and being able to tell people we went swimming with sharks, such misunderstood creatures. They're all friendly giants in the sea.
I'm gone. I've got a lot of questions come out of that. What kind of sharks were these, and why wasn't there a cage?
Apparently that if they're well fed, they don't want to eat humans. So they weren't great whites. They weren't the big great ones. Oh, I'm not sure. I'm gonna say tiger shark, but I'd have to double check that one. They were big creatures. Like looking back at the photos, you're like, holy, why did I get in there? But I just remember being like, oh, get me off this boat, get me in this water.
Well fed with all the burley thrown over the edge. Wow. That 2016 Canes team, who was who's the grubbiest in the team?
Grubbiest. Oh. No, that's a good. Oh, Dane Coles. That's a, geez, I was thinking for that for a second. Then obviously Dane Coles pops in the head. That's no brainer, mate. He's an absolute grub.
What about Mr. Nice Guy?
Mr. Nice Guy, Callum Gibbons, mate. He's the guy. If you had a daughter, you'd want him to date her. He's such a genuinely good guy, and mate, play the guitar, go surfing. He's a legend.
Nice. Who is your roommate for the year? Do you keep the same roommate, or is it changed?
No, you don't. It does change. I was often with Matty Proctor. He was always good value. He loved to punt as well, so we'd spend a fair bit of time winding home some nags, and he was a big basketball punter as well, so he'd always try and tip off a few winners. Not very successfully, to be fair, but it was always a good watch.
Very nice. Before the success of the back-to-back finals, you led Taranaki to their first ever. I don't even know what it was then. I would say NPC title.
Yeah,
2014 against Tasman. That must have been a fairly emotional day. It was a hell of a game. There's a lot of points scored.
Yeah, mate, that was one of the great games, and probably the most in the red of a game I've ever been. Like the boys were just so into me, the Tasman lads. So much niggle was out in that game. We were all so pumped up. Not many of us had experienced a final quite like that. Like both teams hadn't really been in too many finals previously. A sold out Yarrow Stadium, which is such a cool stadium to play rugby at. Rugby built, crowds right on top of you, really feel it, and real vocal Taranaki fans were right behind us that whole week. It was a real surreal experience that, and one of my real highlights of my career that week and that game, and to get the win over Tasman. Like obviously when I left Tasman, it was a really hard decision. The only reason I did leave was to get a Hurricanes wider squad. You had to be in the region to get a wider squad. So the opportunity to play Super Rugby was only there if I left Tasman. Crusaders didn't want me, so I had to leave the Tasman region to go to be within the Hurricanes region, which was Taranaki in the time. Now they are in the Chiefs region, but it's all pretty confusing. But I did have to leave to progress my career and to be able to lead Taranaki in that final. Yeah, mate, it was a surreal experience, and one I look back on with such good memories.
Yeah, nice. Over your career, obviously, then that year, I think you played quite a lot of positions in the back line, 10, 15, bit of 12, maybe a little bit on the wing. What was your favourite, your most loved spot?
It did depend what side I was in and like the makeup of the side. Like at the Hurricanes, playing fullback was ideal for me because we had Bowden at 10, and being able to give comms and voice to him and help his job was a dream, because you tell him the left corner's open and he's putting it 1 meter out from that left corner and bouncing it into touch. And just his skill set was so good that what I could see I felt like could help him. So just because his skill set was so good, and obviously took a little bit of pressure off him in terms of calling the shot, so he could just sort of express himself a little bit more. But when I went into other sides who didn't have a 10 of that caliber, I felt like I wanted to be in control and wanted to be calling the shot, so I did prefer 10. Never saw myself as a 12. That was just makeshift, and even found myself at 13 over in Japan. So definitely wouldn't consider myself a midfielder. I'd consider myself 15, 10, depending on the team setup.
Yeah, nice. You touched on going overseas. You went to the London Irish in, what are we, 2016?
Yeah.
All right, there you helped them. They'd fallen out of the Aviva Premiership when you went over there?
So how that happened was at the end of 2015, when I was starting in that final against the Highlanders. Obviously, there was so many talented outside backs at the Hurricanes. Like I was starting ahead of, I think we had Nehe Milner-Skudder, we had Corey Jane, we had Julian Savia, Jason Woodward. We had all these guys fighting for the outside back role, and 3 of them were All Blacks. And I just felt like my time starting at Super Rugby level was probably not going to last. I just felt like there's too many guys in behind me. So after that season, I signed over at London Irish pretty early. Clark Laidlaw, who was at the Hurricanes at the time, was keen to get me over there, and I was pretty keen to jump at that opportunity, knowing that, or thinking that, my time at Super Rugby level was probably numbered, especially starting. So didn't eventuate like that. I ended up starting the whole 2016 season as well, played a pretty big role for them into that championship. And then at the end of that season, London Irish had been relegated, so a lot of things had changed. And at the end of the season with the Hurricanes, I ended up wanting to get out of that contract. I actually ended up calling the CEO over at London Irish and telling him that I'm not coming. Hurricanes were keen to match what I was getting paid over in London Irish. They were pretty keen to keep me there after the year, and a few things had changed over at London Irish, like being relegated, exchange rate had dropped massively. There's a few things like this, and I was like, maybe it's not worth going. So I ended up calling the CEO, and didn't last long, that conversation. Although I was extremely nervous calling him, he basically just said, "No, mate, you're coming. We'll see you in a couple of weeks." And I was like, oh, "Okay, okay, I'll see you soon." And just got on the plane and ended up playing the championship over there, which was like I said earlier. Rugby wasn't that great, but some amazing experiences off the field, like going to some pretty unique places over in the UK, and met some unreal people, and yeah, really enjoyed my time over there, and so did the family. So it was cool. Definitely no regrets there either.
And you won the championship to get back to the premiership too.
Yeah,
third title and or fourth title in 4 years. Third title.
Yeah, my rugby career had gone from, like you said at the start, losing probably 90% of my games, to a patch when I was with Taranaki Hurricanes and the first year at London Irish, where I was winning 90% of the games, and then finished it with another 90% of losing, because once we got promoted at London Irish, it wasn't as successful once we're up in the championship, premiership again. We won our first game, which Cloud9, playing the Harlequins at Twickenham, 60,000 people. It was incredible game, one of my favorite games over there. And then for the rest of the season, which are long seasons, there was a lot of losses. I think we only won 1 or 2 more. So it was a long year with a lot of losses. And in the winter months over there, it can be pretty tough to keep going. But mate, like I said, I loved my time over there. Lots of cool people that I met, and awesome chance to travel the world and see that side of the world over there. Everything's so close, and you get some decent time off, or some weeks off here and there, which is always cool to make the most of.
And you said earlier you went to Japan. You're at the Red Sparks in Japan. As you say it, and not also very lean pickings there. What do you make of Japanese rugby now? Like, everyone's going to Japan. It used to be everyone was going to Europe, but now Japan seems to be the place. Is it because it's closer? Is it because the rugby's better? What's the reason?
Mate, honestly, I think the big one is the financial difference. Like, money in Japan is just next level. So a lot of guys, I'd imagine, are going there for that, but it's also an awesome country to live in. Like, such a cool experience traveling Japan, seeing that part of the world. The people are so lovely over there. The food's awesome. And it's just a really cool experience. Like, I would recommend it to any player to go at least have 1 season over there, because it is such a awesome experience. And I really felt like the pressure as a rugby player sort of came off as well. Like, there's no media, or none of your mates are watching, none of your family's watching the game. So if you had a poor game or a good game, you weren't getting caught up in the moment of having a good or poor game. You were just playing, and that was pretty much it. Like, it felt like being a club player again, but getting paid 3 times more than you were playing Super Rugby. So it sort of makes sense to go over there from that perspective. But yeah, the rugby, there's been a massive growth in the rugby. Obviously, long trainings, massive pre-seasons, probably not, like things like GPS and stuff weren't happening over there. Like you're running huge numbers in some of your trainings, and the physio treatment and all these little things aren't up to what you'd expect here in Super Rugby or even over in the Premiership. But I think the rest of it sort of makes up for that.
And do you think the sort of rise in Japanese rugby as a whole is reflected by all of these international players going over and making the product better?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously the coaching staff there. And there's a lot more players who are becoming eligible for Japan as well. Like these guys are making big differences too. But, excuse me. When you've got guys, world-class guys like Bowden Barrett, teaching the Japanese 9, current Japanese international 9, of what some of the skills that he's learned and things like that, it's only going to have a positive effect on these guys. So the more world-class players sprinkled in throughout these teams, there'll be international players for Japan in all of them. So they'll be picking up bits of advice and bringing it all together. And yeah, it's just a good recipe. And I think there's going to be huge growth from Japan going forward.
You would have been disappointed to hear of the Red Sparks being disbanded. I was reading about that the other day. It seems a little bit sad, given they've been around for a while.
Yeah, that was really tough to take, and I felt like I sort of let the side down there. Like I was there signing for a couple of years, hoping to get them a few more good results than they did, and to hear that they've gone down to ended their programs, really disappointing. There was a lot of quality players there too. A lot of good foreign players over there as well, good lads. So it was a real shame to hear that, and gutted for them. But I did see them post a team quite recently, so I'm not sure if they've just dropped right down to the start again, down the grades. But it was good to see the guys doing some sort of rugby again. So hopefully they can get back to where they were. But I just don't think they can compete with some of the big spending clubs, and money talks over there. And if you're not willing to spend it, you're not going to get the players in, and then it's a real hard road when you're trying to play. A lot of these Japanese guys are working throughout the day, so you've only got your sort of foreign players who aren't in really full-on code, and the rest of them, their main focus is getting their work done. Then after work, they come in and train with the side, and that's when our training hours were. So if you haven't got a full-time Japanese crew and you're not willing to spend on big-name foreigners, it's very hard to get the results.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting to hear that it's like a semi-professional. I thought they were all in, but I guess if you haven't got the money, then can't afford it. We'll start to wind up here. James, won't keep you much longer. We'll circle a bit back to punting. You said during your career in the hotels and all that, you're punting all the time. Have you got your best punting story for us?
Oh, my best punting story. Probably my best punting story is usually your biggest collect, isn't it? So this was a bit later on. I was actually in Japan. I remember this so vividly because it was when the Japanese horse won the Cox Plate. Can't quite remember his name, La Gracious or something like that. But he was the last leg of a Super Hinds, which I think equivalates to a poker on the New Zealand TAB. So that was to return 32,000 if he got up in that Cox Plate, and the money was just pouring in for him. And I was so confident that he was just going to win. And I was on the train in Japan, and anyone who's been on a train in Japan will know that no one talks, no one makes any noise. It's just pure silence. And I'm trying to wind home this Japanese nag for a massive collect with my wife next to me. We're off to a World Cup game too. We're about to go watch the All Blacks play. I'm pretty sure it might have been even play England, or might have been the quarterfinal. But we're off to the All Blacks game. I was about to watch this horse or wind home this horse for the Cox Plate and have a massive collect. So I was winding it home at the top of the straight, looked like a winner early, and I was just giving it one. And everyone was looking at me. My wife's so embarrassed, nudging me to keep quiet. I'm like, no, not this time. We're winding this one right to the finish line.
Oh, wow. I've never been on a train in Japan, but I could only imagine what the looks you were getting.
Well, just they're all like, what the hell's this guy on about? What the hell's he doing?
Wow, that's incredible. You mentioned the Super Hinds. That's up there for, the sickest of the sick punters. What's your go-to bet type? Is it something like that, or is it a standard head-to-head or whatever?
Generally, like, depending on the odds of. So I think the key to punting is obviously being patient and not punting more than you need to. So I'd sort of spread it out. So if it was, let's say there's a Saturday, there's 5 or 6 horses I like. Depending on the odds, I'd generally do the Super Hinds or the poker. If they were a bit shorter, or I only liked 2 or 3, then it would definitely be a multi. And so they're probably the 2 main bets that I'd always do. Always felt like they were the best bang for the buck. When you've got momentum, they generally all seem to come in. When you don't, none of them are coming in. So that's sort of the way I like to look at it. And then it was just about being patient. And if you missed your first couple, that's why I like those Super Hinds bets, because especially if you've got them with decent odds, you only need to get 3 or 4 of the 6 and you get a decent collect, or you get 3, you get your money back, sort of thing. So that was probably my preferred way to bet. But obviously, if there's just one thing I liked, it would be just slap it on the nose and wind it home.
Nice. So obviously, my next question here is a sport or racing. You're obviously a racing punter through and through, but you said you like to have a crack on the NRL every now and then. Who do you support in the NRL, and I guess who do you back the most?
Mate, I support the Warriors, have done for a long time. I did grow up in Auckland till I was 8 years old, so spent a bit of time on the bank there at Ericsson Stadium back in the day. But I don't touch the Warriors, never. That's like, they've been on a ban for the last 5 years. I just can't pick. I can't pick them. When I back against them, they win. When I back them, they lose. They're just so tough to get a read on. So they've been on the don't punt pile for, like I say, about 5 years. So I like, it does go and fly. I just sort of find something that I think will like, or whether it's just an interest bet. I wouldn't go too heavy on some of my league games. It is generally more just something to follow. And I'll do that for any sport, to be fair. If someone said they had some good oil, or they thought this thing was going to, if this basketball team was going to win, then I'd often chuck them in a multi and give me something, bit of side interest to watch.
Nice. The Warriors are a tough one. They've probably been in my no punt pile for 5 years too, but I continue to punt them. I cannot.
Geordie will turn them around though. Geordie will.
Yeah. Back in the racing game, do you follow any particular runners or drivers or jockeys, or you just sort of go by the feel of your nose?
Well, back in my prime, when I was right into it, I used to have pretty good contacts with a lot of the jockeys and drivers, so they were generally the ones I would follow. Dexter Dunn in his prime was, he still is world class. He's killing it over there. He's someone I want to get on, actually, on my podcast. But guys like him, Matty Cameron, Opie Bossum, a couple of guys who have sent through some good mail previously, which is always much appreciated. But I mean, a lot of the time they're wrong as well. So probably just as often. I mean, you think they have a bit more of an insight riding them or driving them at track work, but once they get out on race day, a lot of things change, and there's a lot of variables that go on. So although pretty early on I got some good results, I probably quickly gave that all back with a couple where you get your confidence up too high and you feel like because he's messaged you, it's definitely going to win, and you get let down. So it does swing and flows. But excuse me, a couple of horses I loved following. Like I said a bit earlier, it's quite cool following them from young horses and going through that journey with them. But couple that stand out would be Lazarus. Lazarus was such a champion. He was one of those horses you're just willing to back anywhere, anytime, because you know that he's going to give it everything, and he could be parked or 3 wide the trip, and he's still gonna, give you your money's worth. Yeah, mate. There's been so many. I love when you're ending a multi on a horse. They're always the ones that you remember probably the most. When the heart rate's really going before the gates open, and you're just really hoping that this thing can get you home and collect for you. So yeah, mate, a lot of good memories on the punt, especially with some of the boys.
Yeah, nice. What does Boxing Day look like for you this year? There's a lot of punting to be done. 3 good meetings at Ellerslie, Awapuni, Wingatui, the Ashes, NBA, NFL, and the rest. What do? You park up on the couch and kick back, or is it get the bets on early and head to the beach with the family?
Mate, I wish it was park up on the couch. But like I said, those days are long gone. I'll probably be trying to create my own memories out on the front yard or down at the beach playing backyard cricket or a bit of touch with my kids. And to be honest, I probably won't even get to have a punt. But to all the punters out there, no doubt, I do miss those days, being able to just park up on the couch, flick between all the stations. You got all the different sports, all the different race meetings, or head down to the pub with a few mates and have a syndicate. They were always good times. So yeah, a bit jealous of those people.
Yeah. Futures betting, and in particular, Super Rugby. I know you can't bet on rugby, but I'm just going to ask. Doesn't actually have to be betting. Just who you think's going to win Super Rugby Pacific. Yeah, we haven't seen a revised draw through COVID. I think it was supposed to come out last week. I haven't seen anything yet, but if it all goes ahead as we think it will and as planned, who are you tipping to win Super Rugby Pacific this year?
Yeah, I was actually looking to check the odds out. I couldn't see any odds. I was quite interested to see how they would sort of mark them this year. But I mean, Crusaders will be favourites. Their team hasn't changed too much. They've got their backlines incredible. They've got that many people to choose from. I'm guessing maybe the Blues are going to be second favourites. I feel like they've recruited pretty well. Showed some pretty good signs last season. Then, I mean, for me, it would be probably the Hurricanes. I'm a bit biased, but I feel like having TJ back is going to be massive for them. They didn't probably have the season they did last year, and it sounds like they've had a pretty good look at how they did things, and they've got so many young, talented guys who you might look at their team sheet now and think, don't really know him. He's not world class, but by the end of the year, I think you'll know some of these guys' names who are world class. They just haven't had the opportunity to show it yet. So I think they'll be my dark horse, but like I say, very biased. Highlanders, I know Shane Christie and Clark Dermody very well. They'll have them firing. And the Chiefs, mate, they had a big year last year. So it's so hard to stack up because there's such small margins win these games, especially between the New Zealand sides. And I have ruled out the other sides. I don't think the winner will come from Australia, to be fair, or Moana Pacifica or Fiji Drua. It's going to be awesome to have those teams involved, but I think when we get down to the crunch time, it will be one of those 5 New Zealand sides. But like I was saying, the margins in these games are so small. Like, you've got to be so much better than a team to guarantee yourself a win. Like, bring the referee and a few crucial moments into a game, and it's so easy to win or lose a game when these teams are so close. So, and then a little bit of confidence comes from that, and once you've lost a couple, you can get into these spirals. So it wouldn't surprise me for any one of those teams to finish first or any one of those teams to finish last, to be fair. But I mean, if your life was on it, you're probably putting your money on the Crusaders. If you're looking for some value, I'd be going the Hurricanes.
God, I hope the Crusaders don't win. That's my one hope.
Mate,
yeah, that's all the Crusaders fans out there. What about top try scorer? anyone that's taking your fancy, or anyone in the NPC ranks that we might not know about that we should keep an eye on?
That's a good question. It usually comes from one of the
top
teams, and I mean, you'd be hard to go past Will Jordan. That guy can just score tries. I mean, that's what he does. He's a freakish try scorer. So same again, if my life was on it, my money would probably be going on Will Jordan. If you're looking for a little bit of value, someone like Salisi Rayasi, I feel like he's going to have a massive season this year for the Canes. He's also a freakish finisher. The disappointing thing about Auckland not being in the NPC this year was guys like him, guys like Roger, not getting a chance to showcase their talent. So, mate, he is an unreal attacker, like world class. He's a freak. So, mate, I'd imagine he's going to be right up there, especially if the Canes have a good season. And then a real bolter, Jim Tavatavanawai from Tasman. He's gone to Moana Pacifica. He's a beast. He's a little pocket rocket. Had a big year for Tasman this year. Don't know how many tries Moana Pacifica are going to score, but if they do surprise and have a massive year, or maybe play some real open, entertaining rugby with both sides having big scores, he could be on the end of some, or even create some of his own tries. So he's one to look out for. Nice.
I'll just jot that down. Yeah. How do you think Roger Tuivasa-Sheck will go?
Yeah, real interesting. So hard to know without having a conversation with him or seeing what he's doing. But it is incredibly hard for a league player to come to Union and pick up the game quickly. Even guys like Ngani Laumape, Sonny Bill, although they got to the very pinnacle of the game, it did take them sort of 3 or 4 years before they did get there or feel really comfortable there. So I feel like he's going to be successful. It's just going to be how long it's going to take him. He's got all the attributes: footwork, he's strong, he's fast, he's works hard by the sounds of it. He's keen to learn. Mate, there's no doubt that he will get there eventually. I feel like there's a lot of expectation on him to get there straight away, which is probably a little bit unfair, but who knows? He could instantly just pick it up, especially if he's out on the wing. Won't be so much pressure, but if he is looking to move into 12, things like the communication and stuff that he's going to have to give to his 10, and being able to read the game so quickly, especially at Super Rugby level, is probably going to take a little bit of while to adapt to. So I think if they start him out on the wing and then slowly work his way in, that's probably going to be the best way for him to do it. But we'll just see what happens. There's no doubt he has the ability to succeed.
And I think too, if there's anyone that can handle expectation like that, it's probably Roger, after what he had to go through at the Warriors, being given the captaincy so early, and then going on to have close to the greatest Dally M season we've ever seen, and then almost backing it up again. So yeah, I'm really excited to see him out on the rugby field. Last couple, Rugby World Cup. Firstly, the eligibility rules. What are your thoughts on that as a whole?
Mate, I think it's awesome. I think it's just what it's going to add to the game is going to be cool. I even talking to James Lowe the other day, the thought of playing Tonga pre the eligibility rules compared to post is just such a different mindset. He's potentially going to be marking, Falau, Piatau, Ngani Laumape, Fiki Toa. I mean, that in itself is like, even if people don't agree with the eligibility rule as such, what it's going to do to the sport and showcase the game is going to be massive. Everyone will want to tune into those superstars of the game on the biggest stage, which is the Rugby World Cup. So I think it's going to be awesome for the sport, for Rugby World Cup. I do feel for the Tongan guys who have been in the side for a long time, who are now probably going to miss out, and the pathway will be a lot harder for the local Tongans or any Pacific nation guys to get through there now, because these guys will probably block that path, and I get that. But at the end of the day, people want to see the best players playing, so that's the way to do it. And I'm really excited to watch this Rugby World Cup and see how much of a difference these guys do make.
You see the effect that it's had on the rugby league, right? With the Tongan team there in particular, like it's a no-brainer. It has to happen, and even I'm nobody, but I think the window should be short. I think 3 years that's a long time, and for some of these guys, the back end of the All Blacks career, they could go on to represent these other teams and help that pathway. But at 3 years, if you're leaving the All Blacks at 37, 38, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I think you've got Nani on your side there. I saw him mention that the other day. He's pretty keen for it to be cut right down so he can get straight back out there. But I do think league is a little bit too far. They pretty much just get to choose what side they want to represent at the start of the year. And I don't even know if you have to have any of that culture in you, but you just choose your team. It's a lot looser over there. But yeah, like you say, it has made a massive effect to the Rugby League World Cup.
Got any more clickbait for us before we go?
Oh mate, I did speak to Rugby Pass the other day. I did feel like it was getting a little bit out of hand, some of those articles coming out of the podcast. But I had my last episode released today, which was James Lowe. It was an interesting yarn, actually, like how close he was to being an All Black and how close he was around staying and chasing that All Black dream still, but obviously went over to Ireland and now playing for Ireland against All Blacks. It's pretty crazy journey that he's had. So no doubt a few bit of clickbait articles will be James Lowe says Ireland will win the World Cup. James Lowe says he would have been an All Black. These sort of things will come out. So no doubt there'll be a bit of clickbait there.
James Lowe scared of Tonga. Question that we sort of touched on earlier, and one we like to ask. I say all of our guests. We asked Joe Parker, and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask the next person. Is this our year? The Warriors. Is this our year?
I think a lot of it's going to depend on whether Geordie does make that move. If he does, it definitely is. If he doesn't, I don't think it's going to be. I think I'd be pretty happy with a top 8 finish this year if Geordie doesn't go. I feel like that would be good enough. I feel like some of those top teams are just on a different level in the NRL at the moment. Those top sort of 3-4 teams, I feel like there's a bit of a gap and it's only getting bigger. So and those new rules have made that even more prominent because, I mean, some of the scores, they rack up scores a lot easier than you're used to, I guess. So, as much as I'd love to say, yes, it is the Warriors, I'm going to say no, but top 8. So that's half a win.
There's a small win. We'll take that. Well, James, thank you very much for joining us here today on Sports and Other Stuff. Really appreciate your time. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of that. Hope you and your family have a fantastic holiday. And, we at the TAB wish you all the best for 2022.
Thank you very much, mate. Thanks for having me on. It was a good yarn. Good to go through some of those stories and journeys and punting memories. So, mate, appreciate you getting me on, and same to you about Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And to everyone out there listening, hope you're all safe and have a good Christmas and New Year as well.